Ever heard of Project Red Map?
Texas is now more red in the United States Congress.
Governor Greg Abbott just had Texas's congressional maps redrawn to give his party 5 more seats in the House. Governor Gavin Newsom's working to do the same thing in California for his party, and the domino effect is hitting New York, Missouri, Indiana, Illinois, all 5 years before any redistricting is even supposed to take place. Redistricting is supposed to be a steady, reliable process that takes place once every 10 years, after the census, so districts can be made based on population. But in the past couple of months, it's quickly devolved into a chaotic mess, where states are planning to redistrict in 2025, 26, 28, almost every year, with no consideration for population or how to make sure their citizenry is best represented. John Bisignano, president of the National Democratic Redistricting Committee, has been advocating for fair congressional maps for years, and thought he'd seen it all. But what's happening right now is unlike any mid-decade redistricting we've seen in modern history.
What is problematic is when people take that data and try and manipulate it to create maps for themselves that only they will be able to be elected in. And even especially problematic is when people start doing that at different intervals than every 10 years. Many people are saying there have been redraws, and that's true, because the reality is the last time we ran a congressional election on the same map 2 years in a row was 2014. So it's been a long time. The map does change, but almost exclusively because of court orders or different specific nuances in states, not because for absolutely no reason a governor and a president decide that they want to take a hostile position towards their own voters and create a totally new map in the middle of the decade.
And in our current political landscape, chaos of this magnitude can almost always be traced back to the same source. Right after Congress passed Trump's budget, which cut funding for popular life-saving programs in order to give billionaires tax breaks, his administration has been pressuring Republican governors to redraw their congressional maps in a way that splits Democratic voters into a bunch of districts, so Republicans can easily win seats currently held by Democrats. Now, historically, when a politician wanted to win an election, they would advocate for policies that people wanted and convince people to vote for them. Redrawing the maps the way Trump's pushing for cuts out that pesky democratic process and lets politicians select enough guaranteed voters to secure victory. And by the looks of it, that's the only way Republicans believe they can win a majority of seats in the House and keep control. I was talking about this with Representative Lloyd Doggett, a Democrat from Texas who could lose his seat because of these new maps. His district, which covers Austin, got cut up and divvied out between 3 Republican districts, giving those 3 a stronger majority, while taking enough Democrats out of Doggett's district that there aren't enough there for him to win re-election. Throughout all this, he's been talking with voters, and from what he can see, the timing is no coincidence. Trump's budget was already incredibly unpopular when it passed, and now that it's started to go into effect, and people are seeing its implications in their day-to-day lives, they like it even less.
One of the areas, Cameron, that I've been very involved in as I was the health subcommittee chairman, is the Affordable Care Act. And each year, for a dozen years, I've gone out to an amazing nonprofit here called Foundation Communities that provides objective help and free care to people to choose the policy for health insurance that's best for them. Well, this year when I go there, the prices are going to go up by about 75% on health insurance policies solely as a result of the big ugly bill. Reproductive freedom, another area. And so what Trump said on each of these issues is, give me 5 more Republicans to let me keep doing what I'm doing that is harming families all over our country.
Republicans really don't want to lose control of the House, but instead of listening to voters, they're diluting voters' power so that they can keep theirs. This is like a hypercharged version of gerrymandering, something Doggett is very familiar with because Texas, and honestly just about everywhere, has been doing it for centuries.
Trump minions choose the voters instead of the voters choosing their elected officials. And, in a state like Texas or Florida, we've already been incredibly gerrymandered. I've been run all over the state of Texas by Republicans gerrymandering, trying to get rid of me from my home in Austin.
His Democratic colleague in the Dallas area, Representative Julie Johnson, is in the same boat.
My seat, Texas 32, I won by 24 points. It's an entirely urban district. It's a majority district. 62% renters, working folks. What they've done is they've pieced it apart and divided it into 6 different congressional seats, some going all the way up to the Oklahoma line, others going almost out to the Louisiana state line, others wrapping around like drunk people with etch-a-sketches. These districts make absolutely no sense in terms of their geography and their relationship to the other counties that they're getting paired with. So what they've done is they've taken slivers and sections of Dallas County, and paired it with 5 to 6, 7 rural counties in Texas. And so really kind of diluting the urban vote, the urban presence, and diluting the minority vote, and pairing it with a lot of white rural voters.
Gerrymandering sucks. It's unfair, it lets politicians game the system, it disenfranchises voters, and it's totally legal. It was at its worst a little over a decade ago, and this is where Project Red Map comes into play. Things initially got started after the 2000 census, when Republicans got a taste of the good life. Their party controlled enough state legislatures to have control over the redistricting process in most of the country, so they gerrymandered enough districts to give themselves a 7-seat advantage in 2002. Now, for context, this was the first time since FDR that an incumbent president's party gained seats in a midterm election. And while there was one other thing that helped rally support for Republicans during that election cycle, it was really the gerrymandering that sealed the deal. Republicans used that self-declared mandate to pass unpopular tax cuts, push an unpopular war, and lost the presidency, House, and the Senate. Then free healthcare started to get momentum, and they didn't like that. And people really seemed to like that Obama guy, and Republicans really didn't like that, so they put together Project Red Map, a strategy that targeted about 100 seats in state legislatures in states that would be redistricting in 2010. Long story short, it worked. They took control of 10 out of the 15 state legislatures they targeted, used state-of-the-art mapping software to draw the perfect lines in order for them to gerrymander their districts exactly how they wanted. In 2012, Republicans not only took control of the House, but dominated by winning enough districts to gain a 33-seat margin, even though Democratic congressional candidates that year got 1.5 million more votes than Republican candidates. And people like John have been working to rebalance the scales ever since.
We want the U.S. House of Representatives to represent the people of this country and the people of their districts. What's not okay is going back to the 2012-2014 era of hyper gerrymandered maps where Democrats essentially had zero ability to compete, right? The goal is to have both parties have the ability to compete for voters. And what we had back in 2012, coming out of the 2010 cycle, was essentially a map that was so skewed to Republicans that it was impossible for Democrats to compete to win the House. What Texas is trying to do is take us back there.
After Project Red Map's monumental success, Democrats opted to take the high road. They created independent redistricting committees in states where they had control. These committees take the power to draw maps away from state legislatures and gives it to a nonpartisan group that creates districts catered to the voters' needs, not political parties or candidates. Independent redistricting committees have proven to be a really effective way to combat gerrymandering, and they're really popular in the states that have them. They do have one problem, however. Not every state is held to the standards that these committees create. Places like California or New York or Arizona, where these committees exist, are playing by a different set of rules than states like Texas or Florida or Missouri. For example, even though Newsom says California will create 5 new Democratic districts to offset Texas's redraw, he can't just have these maps drawn like Abbott did. His proposal has to be passed by voters as a ballot measure, which takes time, money, and could get rejected in the end, which is actually a very healthy democratic process by itself. But our system doesn't work like that.
Many Democrats in the past kind of took the Michelle Obama approach that we would like to think works, that when they go low, we go high. Well, I think we've learned that what we need to do is fight fire with fire. And if we don't act more forcefully now, Trump will get enough power that it's really hard to stop him.
Doggett's not the only one ready to fight. And he's right, things have changed. What used to happen in the pre-Trump era was Democrats would lose, complain about how unfair gerrymandering is, and pass these laws to make it harder for them to gerrymander. Meanwhile, Republicans would pass laws that make it easier to gerrymander, and then keep doing it. Again, it's a broken game where one side is playing by a set of rules they made up for themselves, and the other side's doing whatever they want. But this time, Republicans push too hard, and people like Doggett, Newsom, and New York Governor Kathy Hochul are pushing back. The thinking now is, if you're going to play a broken game where you pick the rules, you might as well play to win.
Our party has always been the party that embraces, good government. We're not going to get our hands dirty. It's just a different world. I wish we didn't have to be here. I didn't bring on this fight. I didn't start it. I'm not going to have history judge us and say, you were silent. You didn't even have the courage to stand up and try to change it. All the decorum and all the protocols and all the messages of the past are not going to help us. This is our moment to stand up and fight back.
New York's in a similar situation as California. It has a long process to go through in order to re-gerrymander its redistricting process. So their maps wouldn't even go into effect until 2028. But they can do it. and other states are probably going to follow. And eventually we could be looking at a future where we don't just vote on all 435 House seats every 2 years. We're dealing with entirely new districts. And each time the districts are gerrymandered, the elections become more partisan, the candidates become more extreme, and more of the voters' electoral power will be diluted. Those Democrats that Johnson and Doggett represent will no longer have a representative in Congress who will listen to them, because districts in Texas are drawn in a way that elected Republicans don't have to listen to them in order to win re-election.
It's just disrespectful to the constituents. It's very unhelpful and disruptive to the congressional process and to the legislative process. And so I hope that this highlights the need for federal legislation about when congressional maps can be redrawn, that they should only be done at the decade cycle. Because for one, they're using census data from 2020, since that's the last census that we have. People are upset about it. You get to know folks, and Republicans too. I mean, their districts are all getting shifted around as well. They have had communities that a certain member has invested a lot of time and resources into building relationships in, that they're just getting cut at the knees as well.
When gerrymandering reaches its final form, all politicians will have to do is appeal to enough voters in the primary election, which are the most politically engaged and therefore the most ideologically rigid voters. And in primary elections, you only get a ballot for one party, meaning in districts where the primary election decides who wins, the candidate doesn't need to win a single vote from voters outside their party. There's no incentive to try and represent everyone, just the 20% of registered voters that show up for the primaries. I asked Governor Hochul about this continued escalation, and while she acknowledged that it's a problem, said that until there's a long-term nationwide solution to gerrymandering, she's got to do what she thinks is right for this moment.
This is just something that's going to keep escalating, as you described. You're not wrong about that. We should have a national bill passed. It has been introduced before by Democrats, rejected by Republicans, to say that there can be no partisan gerrymandering. It has to be every 10 years. That is exactly what should be out there. That's fine. I support that. But only if everybody else follows those same rules. Because otherwise, we are seriously disadvantaged. And that's where we find ourselves today.
So looking long term, what are the options? Republican Representative Kevin Kiley has introduced legislation to ban mid-decade redistricting and undo the redistricting that's happening now that would take us back to our more traditional, decennial form of gerrymandering. Representatives like Julie Johnson say that she'd support that, but House Speaker Mike Johnson, no relation, has no plans to bring this up for a vote. Then there's a federal ban on gerrymandering, which would even the playing field. Democrats actually did pass a ban in the House back in 2021, but Republicans blocked it in the Senate. Dems introduced it again when they controlled both chambers in 2023, but it didn't go anywhere in the House or the Senate. A sign that banning gerrymandering is more useful as a political theater prop than an actual goal. Then there's the Wyoming rule. This is more indirect, but it serves a few purposes. So back in the day, the size of the House of Representatives would change depending on population. That became a problem for rural states in the early 1900s, and Congress passed a law to cap the size of the House at 435 and divvy that number up between states based on population. Fast forward 100 years, and districts are massive. When the cap was first put in place, there were about 280,000 people per district. Now we're almost triple that, with around 760,000 people in each district. Districts this size make it hard for voters to actually reach their representatives, hard for the representatives to actually represent their voters, and easier for politicians to gerrymander. The Wyoming rule would sort of fix that. It would remove the cap on the House and set the district population sizes to that of the state with the smallest population, which is currently its namesake, Wyoming. Wyoming's got about 500,000 people in it, which is still pretty big for a congressional district, but a little more manageable. And with a population of 300 million, there'd be 575 total congressional districts. While gerrymandering would still be possible, it would make it more difficult and less effective, as a 5-seat change like what Texas is doing would have a much smaller impact. This is more of a compromise situation, where those who benefit from gerrymandering could still rig things in their favor, but it would be less beneficial. The real benefit to something like this would be to the voters, who would have a more diverse representation in Congress, more accessible representatives, and an opportunity to change course from the hyperpolarization path we're currently cruising down at light speed.